All right, so now that I've actually had some time to just kind of digest everything from the Heidel Ball 2025, I'm kind of mixed. Uh I did do a recap video of the whole presentation that I will link down in the description if you haven't checked out the Heidel Ball 2025, but there were definitely some big positives, right? No doubt. But there were also some real concerns or negatives too. So, if I had to rate the Heidel Ball, like 0 being absolutely terrible, all the way up to like 10 being absolutely god tier, yeah, I would probably put the ball like in that 5 out of 10 range. Like, yeah, there was some good stuff, right? The quality of life improvements alone is a massive W. However, those quality of life features probably should have already been in the game like years ago, but hey, I'll still give it to them. Removing the PvP resistances, right? That's an awesome change. That's great. I think that's going to be great for PvP. However, they did mention that back in December as well, so not really new news there. The all-in-one preset, right? That's going to be a massive quality of life improvement, so that's going to be a great change. I do like the new region, right? It's focusing on the in-game player population. Now, granted, the majority of the population probably won't even be able to do it because you have to be absolutely massively geared, but it does kind of give that newer player or mid-tier player kind of a goal to strive for, right? For that in-game, because there's really no incentive to get max gear because there's a lot of cap content, which isn't necessarily a bad thing for majority of the population. But now with the new region, if you want to be the lord of one of the new castles, you have to be geared. So I do like that incentive. They're really trying to incentivize the push for gear again. But for me personally, probably the biggest negative, and maybe some of y'all feel this way too, is just how overwhelming this new gear direction is starting to feel. So let's talk about this. They're releasing the new Sovereign subweapon and the new Adana defense gear together. I just don't like that. I'd rather them release the Sovereign subweapon in August, right? Give us some time to kind of grind that out, and then maybe 3 or 4 months later introduce the new armor. And I mean, yeah, I get it, right? The new region is tied into the new armor, so they kind of had a package that way, but man, it just feels like it's just too much all at once, especially when we just got the Sovereign main hand and awakening weapons not too long ago, plus the new accessories. So in like the last year and a half, we got multiple Sovereign weapons, a whole new accessory set, and now we're getting a whole new set of armor. That's just a lot. That's a lot. And it's not just time consuming, right? It's mentally exhausting too, especially if you're not already like hard stuck in the in-game gear. Like for newer or those like mid-tier players, this just kind of feels like a mountain that just keeps getting taller and taller. And it's not even just the gear, right? It's what you have to do to even make the gear like viable. Like think about the newer players trying to get into this game, right? They will need to get pin to Vala gear, which will have to be turned into Tet boss gear, and then you have to get that to pin, and then you got to hit Kaffir level 10 on that pin gear, and then you got to get that specific flame to even create the slumbering origin armors, right? And now you'll have to get that armor to at least a Tet version in order to turn that into the new Adana defensive armors. So that's just a massive grind, separate from the accessories and the weapons. And look, new players, they do get a good amount of freebies, and gearing is much easier today than it was many years ago. But I still think there needs to be kind of a better way to approach this, right? Like maybe with the Tuvala gear, all of the pieces can go up to like deck version, which will allow the player to just make those already into full pin armors, and then they can just kind of focus on just purely upgrading their gear from there, right? So just getting the Kaffir level 10 and then getting the flames, or maybe implement a different method, right? But either way, there needs to be kind of a better and just less confusing way of getting the newer players into the game. And I just don't think a free like 10 billion silver is enough. And maybe that's a hot take. Maybe that's an unpopular opinion with getting kind of newer players a quicker kind of head start. But a lot of MMOs implement this type of quicker mechanics into the game, right? A lot of MMOs do this just to kind of keep those players engaged and playing the game. But I think overall we just need something to ease people into these progression paths instead of like having them slammed with like 10 different checklists right out the gate, because people are just gonna quit because it's just so overwhelming. And I just think now the gear disparity is just growing and growing, and that's just a big problem. So the next thing that kind of bugged me was the no mentioning of group PvE content. Now look, I'm definitely more of a solo player, right? I get it, and I think the new region is going to be good, and it's a must for the in-game players, but they probably should have put a little bit more focus on group PvE content too, right? Give people more viable ways of logging in and playing with their friends. Maybe just give us, 1 or 2 solid group grind spots per region. Take a few of the existing areas and then just kind of tune the mobs around maybe like a 3 to 5 man party. Maybe scale the rewards based on how many people are in your group, right? If you go with a three person group, awesome, cool, right? Make it viable. Or if you go with like a 4 person or a 5 person group, right? Just kind of scale the rewards accordingly. I just feel like that's a super easy, low effort, high impact improvement that could have just made people surprised and maybe make them a little bit more happier, because I feel like a lot of people have really been asking for more group PvE grind spots. All right, so going back to the new region itself, I actually like it. I think the boss mechanics, the PvP focused throne war stuff, like that's really cool. And I do like how the gear is going to be more relevant now, whereas before gear was really only relevant with open world PvP where you had to like defend your grind spot, or when we had open world guild versus guild battles, which, we don't really have any of that anymore since a couple years ago. However, if we take a look a couple of years ago when we did have that content, it could almost be enjoyed by anybody at different gear stages, right? However, this content is really only for maybe like the top 5% of the population that will even be able to even have a shot to be the Lord. You could say like, yeah, it gives those kind of newer players or mid-tier players something to kind of strive for, but at the same time, most likely no one's ever really going to be able to reach that point in the game. I just feel like that there needs to be a little bit more kind of content for those earlier stage or mid-stage players to kind of keep them more entertained, right? If we only had, content that only the elite players can do, you're kind of leaving out the bulk of the player base, the newer players, the mid-tier players, the people kind of just trying to jump to the late game. So yeah, I think the Adana region is going to be really cool. I think the idea behind it is really cool, and I definitely think it's needed for those in-game players. And me personally, I'll be looking forward to trying it out when it's released, but I also think that we just need more content for the other 90% of the other population as well. Also, I'm not the biggest fan of time gated content either, which with the new armors, you only get I believe it's 1 stone in order to enhance your armor each week. So it's going to take a very long time to enhance this gear. And of course, you're at the mercy of the RNG god, right? But maybe they're doing it this way to kind of slow down the gear disparity between players. I don't know. It's just a very interesting way of kind of implementing content. So Blue Battlefield, it sounds really cool in theory, but I'll be honest, I don't have a boat. I don't care for sea content. BDO has always struggled with ocean content. Bartering's decent, but the open sea, it's kind of clunky. The movement is just jankety, and I just feel like the whole system has been like sitting on the back burner for years. Like maybe if the map layout had been different, if like the ocean was like in the middle of the world and the other like mainlands was kind of like wrapped around the ocean, and like traveling by ship just felt more rewarding and more convenient than say a horse, then maybe I would have like been more inclined to like do sea content. But right now, as it stands, it just doesn't really feel worth the effort. And honestly, Blue Battlefield, it kind of looks like it's just going to be dropped into like the same neglect bucket as other content. But I'm sure a few players will love it. Maybe guilds will go hardcore into it for a little, but I think for most of us, it's probably going to be a pass. The last concern that I have, which we still don't really know too much about, is going to be the AP caps on grinding spots. It sounded like from what they were saying that the more AP that you have when compared to like lower AP grind spots, it will be less efficient than say if you go to a place that's similar to your AP range, which if that's the case, I think that's just a bad design, because now you're kind of ripping away that freedom that players had to grind at different grind spots, because maybe that recommended spot was 270 AP, but you have 330 AP. Theoretically, if you have more AP, you should make more money than the person who only has 270 AP. Now, granted, I do think if you go to a spot that requires more AP, like Darkseeker's Retreat, you should make more money. But at the same time, the money per hour should not be the same if someone has more AP at the same grind spot. So I really hope that this is not the direction that they're trying to go towards, because I just think it will have more of a negative impact than what you might think, especially if you like grinding at chill grind spots and maybe making a little bit less bit of money than say at like a true in-game grind spot like Darkseeker's Retreat. So I don't know, maybe a hot take, maybe I'm overreacting, but I personally don't like this idea if it's how I'm thinking it's going to be. So yeah, the game is not dying. Obviously, they have another 10-year plan for this game, which they spoke on during the ball, and I think that's great, right? I love this game. I want people to play this game and experience it. I think the quality of life changes are great. The new content is going to be really good for the in-game players, but it would have been nice to have a little bit more content for the middle of the pack players, which, most people are kind of at. But let me know kind of what you think of the most recent Heidel Ball. But as always, thanks for watching. Probably by the time you might be watching this video, we literally just hit 2K subscribers. So y'all are awesome. This continues to be a great journey. And yeah, thank you for the support, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.
Sunsets on black desert sky. It's just you and I.